Hi, Matt. Good afternoon.
Hey Buck, how are you?
I'm good. So I am very excited to sit down with you and talk about the future of retail for the next about 30 minutes. Specifically, we're going to be talking about blend space and the human-centered retail future that's enabled and powered by technology. To kick us off, let me introduce myself. I'm Buck Sleeper. I'm the Director of Experience Consulting at EPAM, a global integrated technology and experience consultancy. And we look at the future of human-centered experiences. Personally, I lead our vertical in retail innovation. So if you can eat it or cook it or buy it or sell it, it's something I want to talk to you about. And Matt, I'm so excited to have you here today. Matt Hudson is the Senior Business Unit Director at Jabil. And Matt, can you tell us a little bit more about Jabil and what you do there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Jabil is a global EMS company. EMS stands for Electronics Manufacturing Services. We first started back in 1966, so we've been in the space for well over 50, 60 years now. We're about a $27 billion company, and we're kind of not a well-known brand, but we are a key part of the supply chain behind most of the global 300 top 300 brands. We work closely with Apple, HP, Johnson & Johnson, Tesla, to name a few. And we're a key part of the supply chain from a manufacturing side of the standpoint. So it's an exciting company. We touch a lot of different customers, a lot of different industries. The division that I work in is actually responsible for our retail business, which is about a billion to a billion and a half size business. And we're really responsible for a lot of the retail infrastructure that's going in the stores now, things like ATMs, kiosks, point of sale devices, card readers, those types of things, electronic shelf tags. And at the moment, my particular project is I'm working on an automated, unattended retail solution, retail service solution called Edge Retail.
Okay, so we're gonna get deep into edge retail, but first, maybe let's start off. When we've spoken in the past, we've talked a lot about what's changing in retail, not only as a result of the pandemic and these very difficult last 15 months, but what's accelerated. So I wonder, Matt, can you kick us off by talking about what do you see coming next? What are the big behaviors that retail needs to accommodate as we look towards the new normal?
Yeah, I mean, certainly since pre-pandemic, there was already a rapid transformation happening, right? A lot of digitally native brands were emerging in the retail space. A lot of the legacy brands were having to really struggle with what do they do with their brick and mortar enterprise, legacy enterprise infrastructures, those types of things. The consumer was changing. You know, the Gen Zs, the millennials, the baby boomers are kind of set and going. Now we have this whole new consumer to think about that's really driven by, you know, relationships. They have a different attitude. They have a different way to consume. Their mindset, their actual attention spans are different, right? My kids are going to be buying, you know, products way differently than I've ever bought a products and way differently than their grandparents bought. So there's this massive transformation happening, and I think, you know, what's happening is, you know, there is definitely a shift to more direct to consumer. So brands are wanting to be able to build sort of those relationships with those new consumers, being able to do it in a much more kind of multi-path, multi-journey way. And I think at the center of all that is certainly technology, right? And you know, I was just thinking leading up to this call about kind of my daily sort of retail journey that I take, and you know, even in the pandemic, things kind of accelerated, you know, super high speed, right? So now we have almost every retail experience that I'm involved with these days is, am I looking at my phone? Am I ordering through my phone? Am I driving up to the curb? And all those features that were probably planned 5, 10 years from now have gotten pulled into 2021, 2020. And now I think as a consumer, um, we're benefiting from that for sure. I'm definitely benefiting from it. I think as a brand or a retailer, I think it could be a challenge because really the centerpiece of all that is technology, right? And technology for companies that are really focusing on their products and merchandising and telling stories, perhaps, you know, having to take on a technology burden is quite daunting, right? And so I think it's a challenge for the brands and the future retailers, but actually the consumer is benefiting quite nicely, I think, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up the phone, and I agree that the phone is this incredible repository of sensors and information and persistence that's right there in our pocket. But as we get back into more physical experiences with retail, I just came back from three days of retail audits in New York City. So first of all, wonderful to be back in New York and to see people out and about in stores, and hotels and restaurants back open. But it made me realize like just how much we'd been missing in only interacting through digital screens, and that the phone, those stores that were doing in-store technology really well actually had the phone stay in your pocket, and not necessarily be the interface between you and the store, so that you can have a greater relationship with the product or with the person who is knowledgeable about the product. So one of the things that I continue to be interested in understanding is how that tech can be as invisible as possible and not pull us out of a product or a person-to-person experience, and keep us present, right?
Yeah, I think, it's a good point. Although we can always buy through our phone or we can learn more about the phone, I think brands are, they're having to build sort of this multifaceted or multi-channel sort of engagement with their consumers, right? And there's certainly a really important aspect of that, which is the actual physical, like touch and feel, understanding and the experience. And I think the important fact about that is that, brands really need to focus their associates and that talent and that know-how really and kind of condense it into those associates, right? So that when you go to New York and you go to Soho and you go into a Ray-Ban shop, you're actually working with an associate that really loves the product, loves the story, loves the consumer, and the consumer can actually touch and feel, right? I mean, you think about like when you buy a pair of glasses, you really don't know if you like it or don't like it until you actually feel the weight of it, feel the actual dexterity of it. Maybe you would buy it online, but you really want to be able to find that experience, right? And so I think, people always talk about bricks and mortar going away, but in reality, what's happening is there's changing into more of this experience economy, this more experience kind of nature where it supplements or helps the overall experience, right? I mean, I think and that's probably one of the challenges that retailers have is how do they convert their physical spaces into something that's more meaningful in this new retail environment and ecosystem, right?
Yeah, and to your point around kind of superpowering a store employee or a store associate, making sure that we're taking away the stuff that technology does really well that we don't need humans to do, but not removing the part of their job that they're actually really good at and very passionate about. We often talk about the framework of the craft versus the crap, and that it's really great to automate the hard stuff, the things that make you feel a little bit more like a computer as an employee, but to make sure that you're given more tools to be really good at those things that you're really knowledgeable for. One of the ways that we did this previously, and this was prior to the pandemic, but if you're flying again sometime soon, check out the digital wayfinding that we worked on with Southwest at Dallas Love Field. And parts of it are very intuitive. The purpose of the project is to get you through an airport with as little stress as possible, to make sure that you get to your gate, and then you can be pushed back out into the rest of the concourse and enjoy your experience there. And basic things on digital signage like, do I turn left or right? Knowing who I am and when I am, so you can tell me to run or to stop and get a cup of coffee. And I think the flip side to reducing the stress for a flyer moving through an airport is that it's also reducing the number of rote questions going to a gate attendant, and letting that person do the thing that they're much better at, which is to interact with a traveler and not to simply answer questions about when the plane is leaving or which gate it's leaving from.
Yeah, I think if those things are done right, it's the consumer recognizes that and notices it. It's really noticeable. I mean, actually, because things are so sort of disrupted and things are changing very quickly during the pandemic, I definitely noticed that my buying behaviors have changed because of these new ways of engaging that I've accepted, and my life has become a lot easier. So now I'm tending to favor those brands or favor those establishments just because it's easier, right? And I think if you do it right, it's a big win for you and the consumer, for the brand and the consumer, for sure.
So you mentioned brick and mortar earlier. What is the future of brick and mortar?
Blended spaces.
How so?
Brick and mortar. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think, I definitely think that brick and mortar is multi. It's also multifaceted as well. It depends on the product, right? If I need to get sort of consumables, right? Brick and mortar is very helpful because it's always there, and I can get it, drive out at 7 o'clock at night, and pick it up if I need it, right? For sure. So in that sense, it's about access, it's about availability, it's about not having now. That being said, we still have, Amazon Prime. Everybody, our kids' generation are the prime generation, right? They expect everything in 6 hours or 2 days and under, right? So, that's even going to improve even more, right? But there is sort of that accessibility and availability aspect of brick and mortar, right? I think the other aspect of it is definitely, big part of it has to be being able to kind of go and touch and feel the products, right? I can order a pair of water skis online and have it delivered to my house, no problem. But is it kind of the water ski that I want? Is there going to be a little bit more expertise there when I talk? So I want to go and visit it before I actually make the decision. I'll probably go to the store and see it, but for a convenience standpoint, I'll probably go home and buy it online. So I think in that sense, brick and mortar is that part of that experience, and actually seeing those higher end products that you want to have a little bit more involvement with. To kind of make your decision. And I think, you mentioned New York City. I mean, New York City is a destination. And I always think about when my daughter was really young, going to American Girl Doll in New York City. And I mean, that's like Disneyland, but it's a retail Disney World, right? So, I mean, there's a certain aspect of a lot of retailers wanting to basically, really have these mega stores or mega experiences. That's not about basically driving the top line revenue of their entire company probably, but just to drive that consumer relationship. And I think that's an aspect of it. So there's other aspect, I think, in blended space that you guys are doing. There's other aspects of it that I think brick and mortar is going to unlock for everybody. Sure.
Yeah, one of the things that we've been talking a lot about is so the collapse of these two channels. Previously, it was either e-com or in person, and we're seeing a much tighter thread, in part because we've lived a lot of the last 15 months online, and in part because the technology and the tools and our adoption of them are finally there to bring those closer together. But what we're seeing for online is there's a real need to create the kind of deep immersive experiences that enable discovery in a remote channel. So you mentioned sunglasses. It's possible to look and see what a pair of sunglasses looks like on your head, perhaps with an AR or VR try-on. But what it feels like, or what it feels like to look through them, that's a different kind of remote experience that has to be unlocked. And on the flip side, brick and mortar has that opportunity to really deepen your experience with that brand and have, I don't know, maybe with sunglasses, it's you try on 30 different types, or you also talk to an eye doctor to understand exactly what your eyes need, and have the kind of experience in brick and mortar that you couldn't possibly get online. And then I think tying them together is what makes both of those channels persistent, so that it's not about how do I get the right pair of sunglasses, but it's how can you help me with great vision or with great style or whatever it is that I'm trying to accomplish.
Sure. Absolutely.
So you mentioned blend space. Blend space is the way that we're talking about digital physical merge. We think there's an opportunity to step all the way back and really rethink what retail means right now, how we shop, where we shop, why we're shopping, and understanding that our modes, the kind of the mission that you have at any moment, are you out to resupply your favorite coffee bean, or are you trying to find a new kind of morning pick-me-up? both of those might result in the purchase of a cup of coffee, but you're in a very different mode when you get into it. So what we're talking about with all of our retail partners right now is that this is a great time to step back. Behaviors are a little bit scattered. Everyone's up for trying something new and novel, and this is a great time to reinvent what retail means. So I wonder, I'll segue there. I know you mentioned edge retail previously. This is a major area of focus for you, and something that we've been collaborating on between EPAM and Jabil. Can you talk a little bit about the edge retail work and what's happening next?
Yeah, I mean, just before you go there, I think what's really important also that's happening. I mean, you're mentioning a lot of new, I would say, features or new experiences and new ways to connect with the consumer. I think what's happened is, the website and e-commerce has been around for 10 years, and everybody's kind of, you have to have your brick and mortar and your website, right? Some people just started off in digital world. Those are the digitally native brands. But we're seeing this transition from an analog world into the digital world, right? And once it's digital, you can do almost anything, right? And I think that's why, platforms, headless platforms like Adobe Commerce are really critical. And a key factor of this change is because once it's digital, then it can be in a headless platform, and you have all your ground truth and your CRM data and your order processing and all that kind of in that cloud-based system. Then you can have these channels out there that you can basically connect, whether it's your traditional website, even your brick and mortar, or if it's your Instagram channel, your Facebook channel, your Amazon channel. And this integrates right onto that. So I think that's a powerful part of it that's happening. And what that does is also allow you to really move quickly as well, because if you make a change in the cloud, it can really quickly be changed out in the world. So if you want to create a new way to connect with the consumer, you can build it, test it, and deploy it relatively quickly because everything's digital. Edge retail is intended to be a little bit of a departure from Jabil's kind of manufacturing core competency or legacy heritage. But since we have a large presence in the retail infrastructure space, we're using that experience to kind of leverage ourselves into a service model type of business that we call edge retail. It's intended to be retail as a service, or RaaS, software as a service, retail as a service. And what we're hoping to do is basically use our experience in making machines, right, to make those machines. And then we have built a platform of services that we call edge retail to connect those machines out in the world, so that when you deploy these machines sort of as a fleet, they can all be managed by the brand and by Jabil at the same time, in a way that's very easy, very economical, and very controlled. And so edge retail is that retail as a service platform. So think of it as a brand, let's say a cosmetics brand, right? Our devices call them unattended edge shops, and they can be deployed anywhere in, say, lower Manhattan, for example. Let's say we have a fleet of 10 of them in key locations with really interesting footfall traffic. The point of edge retail is to be able to enable brands to leverage their digital platform and extend it physically to where their consumers are thinking about their products and needing their products most, right? And so by doing that, the brand can remotely control those devices. Consumers can consume the products on those devices, and it's all controlled back through a cloud-based platform. And we're excited because I think the way we've designed it is so that we reduce the barrier for customers to roll out these fleets, meaning that we are designing them so the platform can be integrated into, say, Adobe Commerce or some of the other headless platforms relatively easy. We're talking like within an hour, and very quickly get up and running, connected to those machines, and not have a huge barrier to entry. I think as brands look at new projects, they look at their CapEx, they look at their budgets, and they look about the cost it takes to actually implement and manage new systems. Our goal with Edge Retail is to be able to create a fleet for them, roll it out, and deploy it with as little barrier as possible.
And Matt, can you talk a little bit about who Edge Retail is for? I know we've talked about completely new entrants. We've talked about brands with an established retail footprint. Who needs this in their retail strategy?
Yeah, we're hoping that everybody does, but I think we're really focusing on being sort of another channel within a multi-channel or omni-channel type portfolio. So brands that already have sort of we have to talk with brands about what is their overall strategy, but we're hoping that they want to be able to enter new markets, get their products to where consumers aren't necessarily kind of serviced by their brick and mortar or maybe even their websites, and to be able to have a different channel for them to experience things. Like, for example, perhaps there's a major cosmetic company in North America that really wants to access some of the European cities, right? And we're hoping that fleets like this are a way for them to sort of access those markets, dip their toe in the water, find locations that make sense for them, find consumers, introduce the product. It's almost like the model of the food truck for restaurants, right? The food trucks are phenomenal in the sense that they're really high quality food, but they're also entrepreneurs wanting to basically not have to buy a restaurant and get it set up in order just to start serving their customers. The food trucks allows them to get close to their customers, create that relationship, create that kind of awareness, and then eventually probably roll into an actual proper restaurant, right? Edge retail could serve that purpose for a lot of brands wanting to enter new markets and understand how their brand is resonating, how their consumers are reacting. It could also be an opportunity for brands to actually add a little bit different dimensionality to their portfolio. Brick and mortar kind of is centered around a traditional retail location, right? Perhaps they want to be able to have, let's say it's a sporting good product or something like that, or athletic product. Perhaps it's better to get it closer to where maybe the athletic events are happening, right? But they don't necessarily have to have a full-on brick and mortar store. So we're interested in talking with brands. We're kind of building the framework. We're building the solution. And we're really interested in talking with brands about how they might put it to practice, right, for their own business model, their own business objectives.
So one of the things that I find extremely promising about the edge retail strategy is that it meets people where they are. We often talk about brands like IKEA do a great job of accommodating multiple shopping modes. If you're in a discovery mode, then going up to the studios and seeing the vignettes works really well for you. If you're in a quick go grab it collect mode, then you go directly to the warehouse and you pick it yourself off the shelf. And I think what edge retail does really well is not only kind of disseminates the discovery, as you're saying, but it's particularly good at collect, given that it can be unmanned, dispersed geographically, and open 24 hours a day. But I think what it completely changes and the opportunity for brands is that you no longer have to locate all of these services and all of these shopping modes in the exact same place, but that you can have your discovery channel in downtown Soho where rents are sky high, and you can have your fulfillment channel, which is just as much a relationship with that brand, dispersed across the city, and keep your delivery trucks from having to get enmeshed in Soho traffic. So it's that breaking free, or the disaggregation of brick and mortar, that I think is really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. So just to get a talk hypothetically with a generic brand, but like, for example, I've been observing sort of this trend in sort of the medical industry, where people working in the medical industry are wearing sort of their scrubs, and the scrubs are actually becoming almost athletic wear, right? And kind of following that athleisure wear, where the scrubs are high tech material and things like that. For sure, you could have a brick and mortar in Soho and have a nice experience of athletic scrubs, medical scrub store. Definitely there's going to be a website with that where you can buy it online and things like that. But for certain products, certain kind of, call them basics, right? Having them on the campus of Sloan Kettering in New York City, right, where those people are coming and going every day, right? Maybe they spill coffee, but they could spill something even more drastic on their scrubs in their profession, right? Maybe they'll need to go off and grab something new, and that's being there right when they need it most. I think that gives that particular brand really 3 different channels to really access that brand's products, right? So I think that's a perfect point. And edge retail is intended to be sort of that, where they can't get else, right? Part of the inspiration for our what we call our DFOP or device fleet operations platform was the Jet Propulsion Labs fleet operations system in Southern California. They're responsible for all the devices, space devices that are out in the galaxy somewhere floating around 500 million miles away. So that's kind of, if they can manage devices 500 million miles away, why can't we manage devices from, West Coast to East Coast or East Coast to West Coast from a retail aspect? So that's part of our inspiration. And I think, being able to get these devices to where it's meaningful for the brand's consumers is where really we want to take it for sure.
Okay, speaking of prototypes in California, I know we've got a prototype underway for the next generation of edge retail. Can you tell us a little bit about what's next in this project and how the listeners here can check it out?
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited because we spent a good part of the last 12 months building out our platform, and it's ready to go and ready to demonstrate. And we can walk our customers through how they would use it and kind of the look and feel of it, and kind of really show it end to end from the headless platform all the way out to the device. And what you're mentioning now is we're also building our first version of what we call the Edge Shop, which is our first device that Edge Retail can connect into. And we're proud to have it on display here in early August at Jabil's Blue Sky Innovation Center in San Jose, California. And so we're hoping that the purpose of Blue Sky Center is to showcase all that Jabil's capable of and all of our technology. And Edge Retail will be a center part of that. And we're really excited to welcome any customers wanting to learn more about Edge Retail to visit us in San Jose and kind of roll up their sleeves and play with it and understand and ask questions and have some of these interesting conversations.
Okay. All right. More to come on that. So thanks, Matt, for joining this session. I know we've put a couple of links to more information about this project and both of our groups and the work we're doing in the meeting notes and chat here. But always good to get together with you and talk a little bit about the future and the future of retail.
Great. Thanks, Buck. Appreciate it.